Medical Officer Hansol stood at his station on the bridge of the Galactic Peace Corps vessel Star Harmony. His antennae twitched as they picked up an unusual signal. The emergency alert system started flashing red. "Captain, I'm detecting a distress signal from Sector Gamma 7, he reported, his fingers moving across the control panel. "The signal is strong, but I don't recognize the ship type." Captain Duha nodded. "Change course. Standard rescue protocol." As they approached the source of the signal, Hansol's eyes widened. Through the main viewport, they saw two ships. One was clearly damaged, its hull scarred with burn marks. The other ship looked even worse. It was practically torn apart, yet somehow still functioning. "That's impossible," Hansol whispered. The readings on his screen showed that both ships had passed through an ion storm. Such storms were deadly. No known species could pilot through them and survive. The communication system crackled to life. A voice came through, speaking in clear galactic standard. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the Earth vessel Helping Hand. We're attempting to rescue the Centaurian ship caught in the storm. Could use some assistance." The bridge crew exchanged confused looks. Earth vessel. No one had heard of this species before. Hansol's medical scanner was going crazy. "Captain, I'm picking up life signs from both ships, but the readings from the Earth vessel, they're unlike anything I've seen. These beings survived radiation levels that would kill most species instantly." Captain Duha opened a channel. "This is Captain Duha of the Star Harmony. We're here to help, but your ship appears severely damaged. Perhaps you should dock with us first." A small laugh came through the speakers. "Thank you, but we need to secure the Centaurian vessel first. They have children aboard. We can worry about our repairs later." Hansol couldn't believe what he was hearing. These unknown beings, these humans, were putting the safety of others before their own, even after surviving what should have been certain death. The Star Harmony moved into position, and Hansol watched in amazement as the human ship, despite its damaged state, performed a perfect rescue maneuver. Their precision was remarkable, especially considering the circumstances. When the rescue was complete and both ships were safely docked, Hansol rushed to the medical bay. He had to see these humans for himself. The first thing he noticed was how normal they looked. They walked on two legs, had two arms, and except for their lack of antennae, they could have passed for any number of species. But their medical scans told a different story. "You have microfractures in your bones," Hansol told one of the human crew members he was examining. "And your radiation exposure is off the charts. How are you even standing?" The human, Engineer Chen, just shrugged. "It's not so bad. Besides, we heard the Centaurian ship had engine trouble. Had to help, you know." Hansol's antennae twitched again, this time in confusion. "But you didn't know them. They weren't your species. Why risk your lives?" Chen looked genuinely puzzled by the question. "They needed help. Isn't that enough of a reason?" As Hansol treated the human crew's injuries that would have been fatal to most species but seemed to be mere inconveniences to them, he began to understand something important. These humans weren't just physically remarkable. Their real strength wasn't in their ability to survive, but in their willingness to use that survival ability to help others. Later that day, Hansol made his first entry about humans in the Galactic Peace Corps database. Humans appear to be nearly indestructible by our standards. But far more remarkably, they seem to view this trait not as a means of dominance, but as a tool to protect and help others. Further study of this species is highly recommended. He looked out the medical bay window at the rescued Centaurian children playing with the human crew members, who were teaching them some sort of game despite their injuries. Hansol smiled. The galaxy had just become a more interesting place. Xenobiologist Jiayun sat in her laboratory aboard the Star Harmony, staring at her screens with growing amazement. The medical data from the human crew of the Helping Hand defied everything she knew about biology. "Computer, run the analysis again," she said, her tail curling with excitement. The results came back the same. The human crew had survived radiation levels that should have killed them instantly. Their bones showed signs of rapid healing. Their skin could repair itself at rates she had never seen before. But what truly caught her attention wasn't their physical resilience, it was their behavior. She pulled up the security footage from the rescue operation. The humans had given their emergency supplies to the Centaurian children first, despite their own injuries. They had shared their food, their medical supplies, and even their personal items with the rescued aliens. A knock at her laboratory door interrupted her thoughts. It was Captain Rodriguez of the Helping Hand, coming in for her scheduled examination. "Please sit down," Jai-Yun said, gesturing to the examination table. "I have some questions, if you don't mind." The human captain nodded with a smile. Jai-Yun noticed that the burns on her face from the ion storm were already healing. "According to these scans, you have 3 fractured ribs, radiation exposure, and minor internal bleeding," Jai-Yun said, checking her instruments. "Yet you gave your medical supplies to the Centaurians. Why?" Captain Rodriguez looked confused. "They needed it more than we did. Their children were scared and hurt." "But you were hurt too," Jai-Yun insisted. "We heal fast," Rodriguez shrugged. "We always have. It's just how humans are built." Jai-Yun's tail twitched with curiosity. "Is that why your species takes such risks to help others? Because you know you can survive?" The captain thought for a moment. "No, that's not it. We help because it's the right thing to do. Being hard to kill just makes it easier for us to do what we try to do anyway." As Jai-Yun continued her examination, she noticed something else. The human was carrying something in her pocket that made soft chirping sounds. "What is that?" she asked. Rodriguez reached into her pocket and pulled out a small injured space creature, a common pest that most species considered a nuisance. It had a broken wing and was wrapped in a tiny makeshift bandage. "Found this little guy floating in space during the rescue," Rodriguez explained. "Couldn't just leave him out there." Jai-Yun's scientific mind struggled to process this. These humans, who could survive conditions that would kill most species, who had technology advanced enough for space travel, were using their abilities to rescue not just other sentient beings, but even small space creatures that most would ignore. She made detailed notes in her research log. Human durability appears to be matched by an equally remarkable capacity for compassion. They demonstrate care not just for their own species, but for all forms of life, regardless of size or significance. This combination of physical resilience and universal kindness presents a unique evolutionary pattern that deserves further study. Later that day, Jai-Yun watched as Captain Rodriguez released the healed space creature back into a safe part of the ship's biodome. The small animal flew happy circles around the captain's head before finding a comfortable spot in a corner. "You know," Jai-Yun said, "when we first detected your ship, many of us were afraid. A species that could survive an ion storm. We thought you might be dangerous." Rodriguez smiled. "Oh, we can be dangerous if we need to be. But mostly, we just want to help make the galaxy a better place for everyone, even the smallest creatures." Jai-Yun looked at her data screens one last time before shutting them down for the day. She had started this research expecting to study an indestructible species. Instead, she had discovered something far more remarkable, a species whose greatest strength wasn't their ability to survive, but their endless desire to help others survive too. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council sparkled under its crystal lights. Diplomat Ta-1 adjusted his formal robes as he watched various species take their seats. Today's meeting would decide the fate of human relationships with the galactic community. Captain Song-Yai stood beside him, her service medals gleaming. She had commanded the Star Harmony during the first contact with humans 3 months ago. Now she would share her experiences with the Council. "The Council will come to order," announced the chief speaker, a tall being with silver skin. "We are here to discuss the human species and their potential membership in our federation." Ta-1 watched as different representatives spoke. Many seemed afraid. "These humans can survive conditions that would kill us all, said one representative. They walk through radiation. They breathe toxic air. They heal from terrible wounds. They are too dangerous. How can we trust such powerful beings? Asked another. What if they decide to use their strength against us? Taiwan stood up to speak. His voice was calm but firm. Honored counsel, before you decide, let me tell you what I have seen. He pressed a button, and a video began playing. It showed humans running into burning buildings to save strangers. It showed them diving into toxic waters to rescue drowning aliens. It showed them using their incredible strength to lift fallen structures and free trapped beings. In the 3 months since we met them, Ta-1 continued, humans have saved more lives than we can count. Yes, they are strong. Yes, they can survive things that would kill us. But they use these abilities to help others, not to harm them. Captain Songyai stepped forward next. On my ship, I watched a human crew ignore their own serious injuries to save Centaurian children. When I asked why they took such risks, they seemed confused by the question. To them, helping others isn't a choice. It's as natural as breathing. The council chamber grew quiet. Then a small, elderly representative spoke up. But what do they want in return for their help? A new voice answered from the back of the hall. We don't want anything. Everyone turned to see Captain Rodriguez of the Helping Hand walking down the center aisle. She had been invited to speak, but had arrived early. On Earth, we have a saying, she said. With great power comes great responsibility. We didn't ask to be tough. We didn't ask to be hard to kill. But since we are, we believe it's our duty to use these abilities to help others. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small creature. The same one she had rescued during the ion storm. It was now fully healed and happily perched on her shoulder. This little one isn't useful to us. Saving it didn't give us any advantages. We help because that's who we are. If you invite us to join your federation, we will bring not just our strength, but our commitment to using that strength for the good of all. Taiwan watched the council members' faces. He saw fear turning to understanding. He saw doubt changing to hope. The chief speaker called for a vote. When the results appeared on the giant screen, Taiwan smiled. The council had voted to begin the process of human integration into the galactic community. As the session ended, Taiwan overheard 2 representatives talking. One said, perhaps we were wrong to fear their strength. The other replied, yes, their real power isn't in their bodies, it's in their hearts. Later that evening, Taiwan wrote in his diplomatic log, today marks a historic moment. The galaxy's most physically powerful species has been welcomed not because of their strength, but because of their kindness. The humans have shown us that true power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice to protect. The warning sirens of Space Station Aurora filled the air with their urgent sound. Engineer Minki stared at his control panel in horror. The station's main reactor was failing, and the radiation levels were rising rapidly. All non-essential personnel must evacuate immediately. The station's computer announced in its calm voice, reactor failure imminent. Time to critical. 40 minutes. Minki watched as various species rushed to their evacuation ships. His hands moved quickly over the controls as he tried to prevent the disaster. The radiation in the reactor room had already reached lethal levels for most species. Engineer Minki, a voice called from behind him. He turned to see a group of human engineers walking toward his station. Their leader, Chief Engineer Martinez, spoke again. We heard you have a reactor problem. You must evacuate, Minki said firmly. The radiation levels are too high. No one can survive in the reactor room now. Martinez smiled. We can. Radiation isn't as dangerous to humans. Let us help. Before Minki could argue further, his screen flashed red. Critical warning. Reactor containment failing. Plant nursery systems shutting down. The plant nursery contained rare specimens from 100 different worlds. It had taken decades to grow them. Minki expected the humans to focus on the reactor. It was the logical priority. Instead, he saw them quickly dividing into two teams. "Martinez, take your team to the reactor," one of the humans said. "My team will save the nursery." Min-Ki couldn't believe what he was hearing. The nursery. But the radiation. "Life is life," another human engineer replied simply. "Whether it's people or plants, it deserves to be saved." Min-Ki watched in amazement as the humans moved into action. The first team, led by Martinez, walked straight into radiation levels that would kill most species instantly. They began working on the reactor, their movements precise despite the danger. The second team rushed to the nursery. They quickly set up portable radiation shields around the most sensitive plants. They worked to maintain the environmental systems, ignoring their own discomfort. From his control station, Min-Ki monitored their life signs. The humans' bodies were taking damage from the radiation, but they kept working. Their vital signs would drop, then stabilize, then drop again, but they never stopped. "Reactor team, status report," Min-Ki called through the communication system. "We've almost got it." Martinez's voice came back, sounding strained but determined. "The containment field is starting to respond. How's the nursery team doing?" "We've saved 80% of the specimens," came the reply from the nursery. "We're not leaving until we save them all." Min-Ki couldn't understand it. These humans were suffering damage to their bodies, yet they were concerned about plants. They had the strength to survive radiation that would kill others instantly, yet they used that strength to save simple flowers and seedlings. 30 minutes later, the crisis was over. The reactor was stable, and not a single plant had been lost. The human engineers gathered in the medical bay for treatment, their bodies already beginning to heal from the radiation exposure. Min-Ki visited them there. "I don't understand," he said. "You risk your lives not just for us, but for plants. Why?" One of the engineers, her skin still showing radiation burns, looked up at him. "Because everything that lives has value. Being tough enough to survive doesn't make us special. It just gives us the responsibility to protect those who aren't as tough." That evening, Min-Ki added a note to the station's engineering log. "Today I learned that the true measure of strength isn't in what you can survive, but in what you choose to save." The humans proved that being indestructible isn't about being invincible. It's about being able to protect even the most fragile things in the universe. Cultural attaché Yu Jin stood in the rain outside a human-animal shelter in a city called Seattle. She had come to Earth to study human behavior, but what she found surprised her more each day. Through the window, she watched a human woman carry in a wet, injured dog she had found on the street. The woman herself was soaking wet and shivering, but she seemed more concerned about the dog than herself. Yu Jin entered the building, shaking water from her protective weathersuit. Inside, she saw dozens of animals. Dogs, cats, birds, and even some creatures she didn't recognize. Each one had a clean space, food, water, and soft bedding. "Welcome to Second Chance Shelter," said Director Thompson, who had agreed to show Yu Jin around. "Would you like to see how we care for our animals?" As they walked through the shelter, Yu Jin noticed something remarkable. Every animal had a human caring for it. Some humans were cleaning cages, others were giving medicine, and some were simply sitting with scared animals, talking to them softly. "I don't understand," Yu Jin said. "These creatures are not useful to humans. They don't help you survive. Why do you spend so much time and resources caring for them?" Director Thompson stopped beside a cage where a young human was bottle-feeding a tiny kitten. "They don't need to be useful," she explained. "They're living beings who need help. That's enough reason for us." Yu Jin took careful notes on her datapad. In the past week, she had visited animal sanctuaries, wildlife rehabilitation centers, and even a farm where humans cared for elderly animals that could no longer work. Everywhere she went, she saw the same pattern: humans using their strength and resources to protect weaker creatures. "But surely you can't save them all," Yu Jin said, watching a human carefully wrap a bandage around an injured bird's wing. "No, we can't," Thompson agreed. But that doesn't stop us from trying. Each life we save matters. Later that day, Yujin visited a marine rescue center on the coast. She watched in amazement as humans dove into cold, rough waters to save a stranded whale. The humans were clearly uncomfortable in the cold water, but they didn't stop until the whale was safe. One of the rescue workers, dripping wet and shivering, explained it to her. Humans can handle cold water better than most species. We heal quickly from cuts and bruises. Why shouldn't we use these abilities to help creatures who don't have them? That evening, Yujin sat in her temporary Earth quarters, finalizing her report to the Galactic Cultural Exchange Office. She wrote, "The most remarkable thing about humans isn't their physical resilience. It's how they view their strength, not as a mark of superiority, but as a tool to protect those weaker than themselves. They appear to have an instinctive need to care for other creatures, regardless of species, usefulness, or intelligence level." She added a final observation. In human culture, being strong doesn't give you the right to dominate. It gives you the responsibility to protect. They measure their worth not by what they can survive, but by what they can save. As she finished her report, Yujin heard a small noise. Outside her window, she saw a human putting out food for stray cats in the rain. The human noticed her watching and waved, then continued setting out food, unconcerned about getting wet. Yujin smiled. She finally understood. Humans weren't just physically strong. They had strong hearts, too. Security Officer Da-hyun and Scientist Hae-nul stood in the observation room of the Galactic Research Center. Through the reinforced windows, they watched as the first phase of their study began. "Are you certain this testing protocol is ethical?" Da-hyun asked, reviewing the safety measures one more time. Hae-nul nodded, adjusting her instruments. "All participants have given their consent. The dangers are simulated, and we can stop the tests instantly if needed." The research center had gathered volunteers from 20 different species, including humans. They wanted to understand if human kindness was truly natural or simply a show for the galactic community. In the first test chamber, they created a scenario where participants found themselves in a room with seemingly dangerous radiation. An injured stranger lay on the floor, requiring help to escape. The radiation posed no real danger, but the participants didn't know this. Most species assessed the situation and chose to save themselves. The humans, however, did something different. "Look at this," Hae-nul said, pointing to her screen. "Every single human participant is attempting rescue, even though our sensors show they believe the radiation is real." In the second test, they placed valuable research data in one direction and the sounds of distress in another. The participants had to choose which way to go, not knowing they were being tested. "The pattern continues," Da-hyun noted, watching the monitors. Other species primarily went for the data. The humans all went toward the distress calls. They didn't even hesitate. The third test involved a choice between personal comfort and helping others. They reduced the temperature in one chamber where a group of cold-sensitive aliens showed signs of distress. In another chamber, they kept it warm and comfortable. "The humans are giving away their thermal protection gear," Hae-nul observed with amazement. "They're deliberately choosing to be cold so others can be warm." Test after test showed the same results. When faced with a choice between helping themselves and helping others, humans consistently chose to help others. They would endure pain, cold, hunger, and exhaustion if it meant someone else didn't have to. "Perhaps they're just trying to impress us," Da-hyun suggested. "They must know they're being watched." Hae-nul shook her head. "That's why we included the hidden tests. Look at this footage from the cafeteria." The video showed a human sharing their food with a lonely alien child when they thought no one was watching. Another clip showed a human fixing a broken cleaning robot late at night, talking kindly to it as they worked. "Their kindness isn't for show," Hae-nul concluded. "It's who they are, even when they think no one is looking." The final test was the most revealing. They created a situation where helping others appeared to guarantee personal harm. The humans not only chose to help anyway, but expressed confusion when questioned about their choice. Why wouldn't we help? One human participant asked during the follow-up interview. Sure, it might hurt us, but we heal quickly. Others might not be so lucky. That evening, Da-hyun and Hae-nul prepared their report for the Galactic Council. They wrote, "Human indestructibility appears to have evolved not as a means of survival, but as a tool to help others survive. Their physical resilience enables their deepest instinct, the desire to protect and care for others, regardless of personal cost." As they finished their report, they watched through the window as the human participants helped clean up the testing chambers, making sure everything was perfect for the next day's experiments. Even after being tested all day, they still wanted to help. "Perhaps," Da-hyun said softly, "we should stop testing their kindness and start learning from it instead." Counselor Jin-woo stood before the Galactic Council chamber, his formal robes gleaming under the crystal lights. Today's presentation would change how the galaxy viewed humans forever. "Honored members of the Council," he began, his voice clear and strong. "I come before you with a proposal to officially designate humans as a guardian species of the Galactic Federation." The chamber filled with curious murmurs. Jin-woo activated the main display screen, showing footage from across the galaxy. Each image showed humans helping others in dangerous situations. In the past year alone, Jin-woo continued, human rescue teams have saved over 3,000 lives in conditions that would kill most species instantly. They have entered burning ships, toxic environments, and high radiation zones to save not just other humans, but members of every known species. He showed the next set of data. Their rescue missions have a success rate of 95%. No other species comes close to this number, simply because no other species can survive the conditions humans routinely face to help others. An elderly council member raised her hand. "But what of the risks? Should we formally endorse such dangerous behavior?" Jin-woo nodded, having expected this question. "Let me share something remarkable. Human medical data shows they heal from most injuries in days or weeks. What would kill us merely inconveniences them. They are, by design, perfect for rescue work." The display changed to show human conservation efforts, but their protection extends beyond emergency rescue. Humans have established wildlife preserves on 17 planets. They run rehabilitation centers for injured creatures. They protect endangered species, sometimes spending years helping a single species recover. He paused, letting the images sink in. Their strength allows them to do what others cannot, but it is their kindness that makes them choose to do it. A new council member spoke up. "What exactly would this guardian species designation mean?" Jin-woo pressed another button, and the display showed his proposal. Humans would lead emergency response teams across the galaxy. They would train other species in rescue techniques. Most importantly, they would have official support for their conservation and protection efforts. He showed footage from Earth's history. Humans have always been protectors. Long before they reached space, they were saving each other, saving animals, saving plants. They built entire organizations dedicated to helping others. This designation would simply recognize what they have always been. The council chamber grew quiet as Jin-woo shared his final piece of evidence. It was a simple video of a human child sharing their lunch with a stray animal. This instinct to protect and care for others starts early in humans. It is not taught. It is part of who they are. "But they are so powerful," another council member said. "How can we be sure they won't misuse this designation?" Jin-woo smiled. "Because in all our observations, humans use their strength for one purpose only, to protect those weaker than themselves. They view their durability not as a source of power, but as a tool to help others." He looked around the chamber, meeting each council member's eyes. "We once feared their strength. Now I ask you to recognize that this strength, combined with their endless compassion, makes them the perfect guardians for all life in our galaxy." As the council began their deliberations, Jin-woo added one final thought. In human mythology, The strongest beings were often designated as guardians, protectors of the weak and defenders of life. Perhaps humans are our galaxy's version of these mythical guardians. They are the ones who can walk through fire to save others, who can survive the harshest conditions to protect life in all its forms. The Council's decision would come soon, but Jinwu already knew in his heart that the humans would continue their work regardless of any official designation. That's what Guardians did. Historian Sun Mei sat in her office at the Galactic Archives, carefully reviewing the past year's records. Ambassador Hyunwoo stood by the window, watching ships come and go from the spaceport below. Many of these ships now carried human emergency response teams. It's remarkable how much has changed in just 1 year, Hyunwoo said, turning away from the window. Remember when species feared humans? Sun Mi nodded, bringing up more records on her screen. Now they request human presence on their worlds. Every colony wants a human emergency response team. She was documenting the changes that had occurred since humans received their guardian species designation. The numbers told an impressive story. Deaths from natural disasters had dropped by 80%. Endangered species recovery rates had doubled. Even space travel had become safer, with human rescue ships ready to help any vessel in trouble. Look at this report, Sun Mai said, showing Hyunwoo her screen. Last week, a human team walked through toxic gas to save a group of school children on Centauri Prime. When asked about the risk, the team leader just shrugged and said it was their job. Hyunwoo smiled. They still don't understand why we find their actions remarkable. A notification popped up on Sun Mi's screen. Another report had come in. This time, human conservationists had spent 3 days underwater to help a dying coral reef survive on an ocean world. They had worked until their bodies were exhausted, taking only short breaks to breathe. The most interesting part, Sun Mi said, making more notes, is how their presence affects other species. People are becoming braver, more willing to help others. They're learning from human example. She pulled up footage from a recent rescue operation. A human team had trained local species in rescue techniques, teaching them how to help others within their physical limits. The humans handled the most dangerous parts, but everyone worked together. They're not just protecting us, Hyunwoo observed. They're teaching us to protect each other. Sun Mi began writing her official historical record. The designation of humans as a guardian species marked a turning point in galactic history. Their unique combination of physical resilience and universal compassion has created a new model of civilization. Where once we measured strength by the ability to dominate, we now measure it by the capacity to protect. She continued typing as Hyunwoo read over her shoulder. Humans have shown us that being indestructible isn't about surviving everything. It's about being able to help others survive. Their greatest achievement isn't their toughness, but how they use that toughness to shield those who need protection. A gentle chime interrupted their work. On the main screen, they saw new footage from Earth. A group of alien children was visiting the human wildlife sanctuary. The children watched in amazement as their human guides gently handled injured animals, teaching the young aliens about caring for other species. Add this to the record, Hyunwoo suggested. Humans aren't just changing how we handle emergencies. They're changing how we think about strength itself. Sun Mi nodded and wrote, perhaps the most profound impact of human influence has been the shift in galactic values. Their example has taught us that true power lies not in the ability to withstand hardship, but in the choice to endure hardship for the sake of others. The galaxy's most durable species has become its most beloved not because of what they can survive, but because of who they choose to save. As she finished her record, emergency alarms sounded in the distance. They watched through the window as a human rescue ship launched into space, rushing to help someone in need. It was just another normal day in the galaxy, where the toughest species had become its gentlest guardians.